Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where you can find all of your basic guides on Total War games. Today we are looking at each individual unit's roles of the Vampire Counts faction. The Vampire Counts armies consist of hordes of zombies and skeletons backed by ethereal, ghosts, and huge bat-like monsters. Their units will never rout, so they can easily tar pit down the elite units. Aside from the campaign exclusive missile infantry, they have no ranged units for the faction. Make sure to join the newly created Discord channel in the link below. Timestamps can also be found if you would like to skip to any particular portion of the video. Zombies are dedicated meat shields. Their role is to hold the line, stall, act as a blockade, exhaust their enemies, and take damage so that the more expensive units don't have to. After zombies have engaged the front line, swing your more expensive units around to flank them. You can also spam zombies to just completely overwhelm an enemy army with sheer numbers and killing them in a battle of attrition. Basic skeleton warriors are not exactly the most skilled soldiers, but this does not really matter. They are subpar melee infantry, but they are far more dangerous than the regular zombies. They also have the added bonus of missile block chance from their shields. You should use them as your basic front line and mix in some crypt horrors into their ranks for more damage. Like the skeleton warriors, skeleton spearmen aren't exactly formidable fighters, but they do their jobs well enough. They have higher melee defense and bonus versus large. These are best deployed on your flanks to let them take any cav or monstrous charges. You can also keep them in reserves to plug any holes in your frontline engagements. Crypt ghouls are a specialist counter to low tier infantry and meat shields. They will slaughter anything with low armor, and they also do serve as a support unit, inflicting the poison debuff, which reduces the combat effectiveness of their targets. As damage dealers, they perform at their best when flanking, but it is often hard to achieve due to their low speed. They can also be countered by a vast majority of armored and missile units. The Karen Wraiths are a valuable unit in the Vampire Counts roster. They are able to survive better than most other undead units, deal an impressive amount of damage, and are capable of making many units rout in a short amount of time. In most cases, you'll want to pit them against enemy infantry. This is a very useful unit to bring against the dwarves since they have high physical resistance and armor piercing damage. Also, their weakness is magic, which the dwarves don't have. The first elite infantry of the Vampire Counts are the Grave Guard. These are a solid and durable unit with decent armor and silver shields. They also have bonus versus infantry, making them a great frontline unit, or you can use them to bolster any weak portions in your frontline engagements. Just know that these will struggle against mid-tier infantry, so they will need to be buffed by magic or bolstered by monsters. The Great Weapon version of the Grave Guards sacrifice their shields and some melee defense for more armor-piercing damage at a higher cost. These are not a cheap unit and does not typically fit into the Vampire Counts tar pit playstyle, but they are great for ringing against the Warriors of Chaos since they don't have many missile infantry and they are heavily armored. Due to having no shields, try to protect them from missile fire mostly. The Sylvanian crossbowmen are one of the two missile infantry units that the Vampire Counts have access to. They are unlocked in the campaign once you recruit a von Karstein Vampire Lord via the Bloodlines mechanic. There's also a limit on how many you can recruit. They should be used as your basic missile infantry, keep them behind your front lines, and fire them into lightly armored infantry. The handgunners are unlocked in the same way as the crossbowmen. You can initially deploy them in front of your front lines so that they can get their volleys up before the enemies get too close. Then you can bring them around your enemy's flanks to fire into their backs. You'll typically want to focus the more heavily armored infantry, and if there are monsters on the battlefields, you can easily focus fire them down. As far as their stats, the Black Knights are a rather mediocre melee cav. Their armor, melee attack, and defense and charge bonus are nothing special, but they are still great flankers because of their high speed and fear. These are the cheapest cav you can get and will easily get the job done. Engage your front lines of zombies and skeletons and bring your Black Knights around the flanks to charge into the enemy's backs. These won't need to be cyclocharged as much as their lance versions either. The Black Knights with lances are the more proper shot cav compared to their normal counterparts. They trade a small amount of speed and melee stats for higher armor, damage, and more than double the charge bonus. These will perform much better in your hammer and anvil strats. They can also be used for engaging the enemy cav, but don't expect them to win against anti-large cav. Utilize them in the same way as the regular Black Knights with the added step of cyclocharging instead of leaving them in prolonged combat. Deploying Hex Wraiths can be a bit of a gamble, although they are excellent flankers who can move at extremely high speeds through any kind of terrain and only take a quarter of all incoming physical damage. This includes armor-piercing damage as well. Their main weakness is magical damage of any kind. They would take massive damage if engaged against units with magical attacks or any type of spells cast upon them. You'll need to protect them from being swarmed and try to buff them with your spells. When fighting against the dwarves, Hex Wraiths will excel due to their dwarves lacking magic. Rival for the best heavy cav in the game are the Blood Knights. They are very strong but terribly expensive. Their charge will reliably decimate almost any unit with the exception of elite anti-large cav or anti-large infantry. In any case, you should pretty much avoid charging them into elite anti-large units. Blood Knights are best used for psycho-charging into the enemy front line's backs. Their charges can even wreck large monstrous infantry, but not single model monsters. You can use them to chase down missile infantry, but I would use your Black Knights or Hex Wraiths for that role, just so your Blood Knights can be used to wreck the frontline battles. Fellbats are useful for picking off artillery and missile infantry. Typically you want to bring 2 or 3 of these and use them to swarm the backline. They are best used by sending them all into one target to overwhelm them quickly. Direwolves have low melee defense, low model count, and especially low leadership, which makes them poorly suited for flanking the front lines. They are best used for chasing down artillery or missile infantry, or you can use them to chase down routing units, making sure they don't rally and return to the battle. Crypt Horrors are the vampire count's equivalent of trolls. They have poison attacks and higher health at the cost of armor and melee defense. These differences make them stronger against less armored and lower damaging infantry, but weaker against dedicated monster hunters and almost all higher damaging units. The poison is not enough to offset their lower damage, so they will likely lose in many one-on-one fights. They are best mixed into your frontline engagements, allowing your meat shields to take the damage while they dish it out. Vargeists are the shock cav of the sky for the vampire counts. They hit hard and cause a lot of damage, but they are relatively squishy. They are best used for dealing a devastating blow to the enemy infantry on the front line. Avoid missile fire at all costs due to their large hitbox and low armor values. The Vargulf's damage is actually pretty good and has an insane melee attack of 48. His attack animations help him in racking up a lot of kills on the battlefield. Vargulfs are more effective units for dealing damage to single entity monsters, although it would still be helpful to surround them with some meat shield units to ensure they don't take too much damage. The Terrorgeist causes terror, regenerates naturally, has bonus versus large, and has a breath attack that is decent for clearing out infantry. They are useful in almost every situation, therefore it should be brought to the battlefield often. Be wary of it getting bogged down by infantry and do not allow it to get completely surrounded. Mainly, you should use them to hunt down large units, particularly single entity monsters. You can use the terror to clear out the frontline engagements as well. The basic Corpse Cart simply provides the Vigor Mortis ability to units in its radius, which increases melee attack and melee defense by 5. This is especially beneficial at making units like Skeleton Warriors and Crypt Ghouls do more damage and last longer in combat against superior units. On top of the Vigor Mortis buff, the Balefire Corpse Cart has the ability to slow down the enemy's Winds of Magic recharge rate based on how many enemy units are within its radius. This effect stacks up to a maximum of 5 units. This is very niche, but can be useful against magic-heavy or unit-heavy factions. The Unholy Lodestone Corpse Cart is the strongest and most expensive cart. On top of the Vigor Mortis, it also provides healing to units in its radius. This further amplifies buffed units' ability to fight far superior enemies. Just be sure to protect this unit as it may become the priority target on the battlefield. The abilities on the Black Coach gives it permanent buffs the longer it stays in combat. Consider using the Black Coach aggressively early on in the battle to unlock more of its augments. Basically, the unit gets stronger as the battle goes on. This unit should be used for charging from unit to unit. Don't allow it to stay in prolonged combat with just one unit as it won't be fully utilizing its charge bonus. The Mortis engine is the elite version of the Corpse Cart Unholy Lodestone. It regenerates nearby allies, provides a bonus to magic recharge rate, and on top of that it drains the life of nearby enemies in its radius. The drain is only active when the cart is in combat, so it is most useful engaged in the center of your frontline battles. It is a fairly large target and will be destroyed if focus fired by missile infantry or artillery. Alright, so now we're going to look at a basic late game army composition. This is actually a more lower cost late game army comp because we have 4 skeleton warriors and 2 skeleton spearmen on the flanks, or 1 on each flank, 2 cryptors just to bolster our front line. We have our wizard or whatever lord will be in the center, the corpse cart unholy lodestone that'll be fighting in the center engagement. We have 2 grave guards. These will be used to bolster the weak points of the front lines, or we will send them after the more elite portions of the frontline battle. We also have a Vargulf. This guy would just be used to wreak havoc on the frontline engagements. We have 2 Black Knights. These will be used for chasing down missile infantry or hammer and anvil tactics. 1 Blood Knight. These will be used for hammer and anvil tactics as well, but mainly for the frontline engagements, whereas our Black Knights will be used to chase down the ranged infantry. We have some Vargeist, 2 Fellbats, and a Hex Wraith. Hex Wraith just because I like to bring at least 1 unit because of their physical resistance and their speed, with Vanguard deployment as well. And so now we're just setting up, we're moving towards them. The Skeleton Warriors and Spearmen have been sent into the engagement. We're bringing out all of our flanking units around their backs. They are trying to adjust to our movements, but our front lines have been rushing them, so it's a little hard for them to move around, which causes us to be able to isolate this great sword unit. We'll charge them with 1 of these, and then we'll just surround them with another cavalry. So front lines have engaged. Cryptors, Skeleton Warriors, Skeleton Spearmen, our Graveguard are falling behind just slightly, and they were shot by the mortars as well. We are getting the Fellbats into the Hellstorm rocket batteries just to shut that down. Can't let that fire anymore. I don't think it actually got many kills or did much damage, so we sent the 2 Fellbats in there. You can see they're dying pretty quickly. Vargeist are just sent in to shut down a lot of the missile infantry. We have our frontline engagements here. The Vargulf is actually doing pretty well against the Spearmen with shields. These are low tier anti-large, so the Vargulf should be able to easily fight them, even though they are anti-large. Frontline battle has been just going on. We did drop a Invocation of Nehek just to get a very good amount of healing in this group. Fellbats are now running free now that they've taken out the Hellstorm rocket batteries. They're not coming back. Fellbats will just be used to either chase down routing units off the battlefield or chase off the ranged units. They're very useful for taking care of the back line as long as you use them to swarm. You can't just send 1. Sometimes they get fought off pretty easily. Our Black Knights are chasing off these crossbowmen. Outriders are pretty difficult to catch, so it's kind of just better to ignore them or try to outmaneuver them, catch them in a corner. Frontline battle is going in our favor. We have Demigryph Knights just wreaking havoc right now. They are anti-infantry, and we don't really have much anti-large to deal with them. Black Knights are coming around. We tried to shut down the Luminarch just to make sure it doesn't get any more shots off. And now the frontline engagement just is going in our favor. Everything is they've pretty much lost their flank. And now we're bringing in the rest of our cav just to charge straight into this pocket of strength they have, creating our own pocket of strength. And as you can see, the Fellbats, they're just chasing off units. These archers are gone. These outriders have been caught by the Fellbats. We do have some archers coming back and great swords. So now it's just a matter of just cleaning up the units. We do have a lot of terror in the army, so these units will be easily routable. So you can see our Vargeists are flying out and they're about to charge into them, but it looks like they've already routed before even getting the charge. And that is pretty much the end of the battle. I think just the Demigryph Knights and the Lord Volkmar is left, and some archers back here. Go ahead and speed it up. Yeah, so it looks like these Demigryph Knights are fighting quite well. 143 kills against us. We did send the Crypt Hordes against them. They're anti-infantry, so They'll still take a lot of damage though, because Critors, they lack in defense. See, these Vargas have been charged into them, and they almost immediately rout. There they go. And that's pretty much how we would want to play as the vampire counts. Just use our front line to hold them still while we bolster our front line with monsters and elite units. Our front line is pretty damaged, but these are just skeleton units, and so it's not too much of a worry. And you can see we lost 572 units, but they're mainly the skeleton warriors. Skeleton spearmen, those are our main casualties, which are easily replenishable on the battlefield. So that about wraps it up for our Vampire Counts unit roster guide. Hope you found it useful for your Vampire Counts campaign. If you enjoyed this content here, make sure to drop a like. Also, hit that subscribe button to keep up to date on any guides I release in the future.